Witches.
I'm Candy.
And I'm Jen.
And we're the Cornfield Coven.
And we are... forgot our own intro.
I was gonna say, it's the first time I didn't have the paper in front of me, and I was like, oh god, who am I? Who am I?
All right. So this episode is called The Murders of Judy Lake Moilanen. Sorry. That's not a misprint, because I believe that there were 3 murders of Judy Blake Moilanen. 2 were attempted, and 1 was unfortunately successful. All 3 were committed by her coward, tiny little man of a husband, Bruce Moilanen. So we're going to get into this. I'm going to let you know this is going to be a long episode, unless we get to halfway through and like it's really long and I cut it into 2 episodes. We're not sure. We don't know. I mean, you guys have a pause button, so if you don't like a long episode, you could pretend it's 2.
You
just
can
use
get a
that pause
snack,
button. Yeah,
come
get
back,
a snack.
go potty, come back, make a cocktail, come back.
Whatever. So yeah, we'll go with it and we will see what happens. This case is also known as the sweater letter. You will find out why.
Did you say sweater letter or sweater weather?
Sweater letter.
Okay.
Like I wrote them a letter.
Mm.
So the book I read is Hunt to Kill. It was previously published as the Sweater Letter, but I think what happened is it didn't do very well in true crime because that's not a very true crimey title.
No.
So they republished it as Hunt to Kill, and that's by Dave Distel and Lynn Distel, and the detail in that book is incredible. It's a really good read if you want even more than I am gonna give you, because this is a pretty crazy case. And I would like to thank my friend Dan. This case was his suggestion. And he is an amazing photographer. He is a nature photographer. So his pictures of waterfalls and the northern lights up in the Upper Peninsula are the best I've ever seen, hands down. So go check out dkcproductions.com. Yeah, check that out. So this takes place in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. We will get into where. I'm going to try to pronounce everything right. I did look it all up. I did talk to Dan. But I still might screw it up because of who I am fundamentally as a person. All right. So Judy Blake Moilanen was born October 16th, 1957, the oldest child and only daughter of Mary Ann and Dale Blake. She and her 2 brothers, Jerry and David, grew up in a warm, religious, conservative home on Cherry Lane in Ontonagon. Nope, that's not right. Ontonagon. Sorry, I knew it was wrong the second I said it, and I have pronounced it so many times. Okay, Ontonagon, Michigan. And this is way up in the UP, right on Lake Superior. Judy was kind and popular, but preferred to stay home with a book or an art project than go out. Her family, like most in the UP of Michigan, did participate in outdoor activities such as hiking and hunting. Judy's childhood best friend was Leanne Daniels, a girl who lived just a few houses down. It would be a lifelong friendship for Judy. Judy also participated in many clubs and activities in high school, including newspaper, yearbook, Future Health Careers Club, While she didn't care too much for sports, she did enjoy skiing. That was something that she really liked and was really good at. And it was on the slopes that she met Bruce Moilanen in 1976. Bruce was a stark contrast to Judy. He was boisterous, enthusiastic. He hadn't had the greatest childhood, and the only place he was mentioned in his yearbook was his senior picture.
Really? Whoa.
Yeah, compared to her, who was like the list of extracurricular activities like ran off the page. So Judy's parents didn't particularly care for Bruce. They accepted the relationship. But, you know, I don't think they necessarily thought it was a match made in heaven, particularly her mother. The couple married in 1978. That same year, Judy started her career as an administrative assistant at Marquette General Hospital. Bruce joined her in working for the hospital 2 years later, originally as an EMT and later becoming an operating room instrument technician. Judy even helped her best friend Leanne get a job at the hospital. Judy was a beloved and trusted employee at the hospital, very much known for her kind spirit. In 1989, so 11 years after they got married, Judy and Bruce welcomed a daughter. So now we're up to Thanksgiving weekend of 1992, and this was a fairly typical holiday weekend. All the Blake children gathered at the house on Cherry Lane to spend the holiday with their parents, but it took Judy and Bruce a little longer to get there than David and Jerry and their families. Bruce had recently totaled their Subaru, and they did not have another vehicle to take them and all of their dogs to Ontonagon. They finally found a 1987 Chevy conversion van on Wednesday, so the day before Thanksgiving, and they paid a $500 deposit that allowed them to take it on a trip and then kind of decide if they wanted to buy it.
Okay.
Yeah. So they arrived like mid-afternoon on Thanksgiving and spent the typical weekend, spending time with family, and hunting was a big thing. So on Sunday, November 29th, hunting was on the agenda for many members of the family and the community. The following day was the last day of firearms deer season. So everybody wants to get their tag filled. Though she had hunted with Bruce on Friday, and with Bruce and her cousins Gary and Mike Nemi on Saturday, Judy chose not to go hunting on Sunday and stayed around the house. She offered to clean up after lunch and told her mother she'd take the dogs for a walk in a wooded area behind Cherry Lane. Springer Spaniels were a big part of life for the family as Bruce ran a training business. So a lot of them had Springer Spaniels. The Spaniels need lots of regular exercise, and the trails in the woods were a perfect spot. Judy had grown up running the trails due to the proximity of the homes of Cherry Lane. It was infrequently hunted. So there's all these houses there. It's a wooded area, but it's not huge. So nobody really feels comfortable hunting there because, you're going to be close to houses. There could be people's dogs and stuff out there. 4 of the dogs belonged to Judy and Bruce, while the 5th, named Streak, belonged to Mary Ann and Dale. So her parents had been gifted to them by Judy and Bruce. Mary Ann would later say she couldn't be positive of the time that Judy had left because she had been in the office, but someone else could. Her brother Jerry had come in from hunting for a late lunch. He then talked to Judy and went to the sauna at 1:15 p.m. When he came out at 1:30 p.m., Judy was gone. So pretty tight window there. Between 1:15 and 1:30 is when Judy left the house to take the dogs for a walk. So at about 2:15, Jerry and his family were packing up and ready to make their trek home. Judy had not yet returned, but one of the dogs, Streak, which is Marianne and Dale's dog, came bounding out of the woods. This wasn't too surprising because Streak was not subject to the same rigorous training as Judy's dogs and was used to having the run of the woods. So it wasn't surprising when he came back, not under her control. It wasn't like she had them on leashes or anything.
Okay.
By 4:20 p.m., Marianne was worried. She was afraid that Judy was out in the woods looking for Streak, unaware that he had come home. So she decided to head into the woods to look for Judy. Her neighbor, Bill, saw Marianne walking for the woods and asked if she needed any help. He thought it was a little weird that she was going into the woods when it was just about to be dusk. Marianne said she'd come back and get him if she needed help. When she got into the woods and blew the dog whistle, all 4 dogs came running, but still no Judy. She called Judy's name and wandered in the direction from which the dogs had come. Still nothing. Unnerved by the silence, the lack of response, and the darkening dusk, Marianne went back to Bill and asked for his help. It was 4:50 when they headed back into the woods.
Ooh.
They found Judy lying motionless on her left side facing them. Her feet were in a puddle of icy water, her chest covered in blood. Judy Blake Moilanen was dead at 35. Bill Dorvanen, the neighbor, rushed an understandably hysterical Mary out of the woods. He went into the first neighbor's house they encountered and at 5:12 p.m. called the sheriff's office to report Judy's death. He then quickly called his daughter, Susan, and told her to intercept Mary and take her to their house. Because if Mary had been wandering back to her house, the only people who were there right then were her 2-year-old granddaughter, Judy's daughter, and her own mother, who was very elderly. And if they had seen a hysterical Mary, and Mary didn't want to go home and tell them right then either. Tom Cousinow was the only deputy available and was led to the scene by Dorvanen. Cousinow did what he could to take pictures and search the scene for clues in the dark Michigan night. Ontonagon did not have a homicide department, so the state police would need to send someone. But was this even a homicide? They were in the woods. It was hunting season. Could this just be a tragic hunting accident? Or was it meant to look as such? Cousinow asked the neighbors if this was a frequent hunting spot. They stated they did not hunt this land and they didn't know anyone who did. The houses were too close for hunting to be responsible here. Bill Burgess, and there's going to be a lot of names here, so feel free to ask me who's who, or if we can forget about somebody, or whatever. But a lot of names will go through, so you'll hear them again and again. Bill Burgess was a jack of all trades for Ontonagon. He had on-call positions as a medical examiner investigator, EMT, court officer, special deputy, and church deacon.
Whoa.
Yeah, like he did everything. I love this guy.
Jack of all trades.
Yes. So Burgess arrived with the ambulance and another EMT, and he checked Judy. And then he's also a medical examiner investigator. So he was able to estimate that she'd been dead 3.5 to 4 hours at this time, and this was at 5:45 p.m.
Wow.
So, just based on the temperature, where it was with rigor, etc. They couldn't leave Judy where she was lying, so they did transport her to the morgue. So even though they hadn't had, like, a really official investigator on the scene, it was cold, there was snow, not much snow, but there was icy water. Her feet were in a puddle. I think the neighbor who found her actually moved her feet out of the puddle because that really bothered him.
Oh.
But... So they had to move her to the morgue. They couldn't leave her out in the elements. That would have damaged the investigation even more.
Wow.
Yeah. So Detective Bob Ball with the state police, and with 21 years of experience, and 26-year-old prosecutor Beth Pakzesny both received calls that night. Cousineau and Sheriff Tom Corda met the pair at the sheriff's department. At this point, they had no idea if this was a hunting accident or something more sinister. They wouldn't decide until they had investigated. So they weren't just like, it's the last day of the season, everybody's agitated, wants their buck. You know, they didn't do that, which,
Wow.
you know, wouldn't be that surprising the last day of the season. So, on that Sunday, Bruce drove around hunting for a while and then woke up Mike Nemi to help him find a buck he'd seen running in the area. So Mike Nemi is Judy's cousin.
Okay.
And he was really like Bruce's only friend. The family had warmed to him. You know, they'd been together for, 15 years at this point. They'd been married for a long time. So the family had mostly warmed to him, but Bruce didn't really seem to have a whole lot of friends, and Mike seemed to be maybe one of them. So Mike and Bruce had breakfast at the Adventure Motel and Cafe around 10 a.m.
The Adventure Motel.
Yes. They returned to Mike's around 10:45. Bruce said he might hunt here, might hunt there, might go into camp where Judy's father, brother, and the others would be. He wasn't really sure what he was going to do. And that was at 11 a.m. that he left Mike's company. Marie Lyons was a little old spark plug who was walking to a party that Sunday. When she was near Cherry Lane, she heard a gunshot. She thought to herself that it was a bad idea to be walking around in a tan coat during deer season, and then checked her watch. I agree with her. And you can see the coat. You know exactly what coat it is. Everybody's grandma had that tan pea coat.
Yep.
And yeah, she's right. It probably wasn't the best idea to wear that coat on deer season day. But she checked her watch because she had that thought, and she's like, hey, I'm walking to this party. What time is it? She noted that it was between 2:10 and 2:15 p.m. And she might have been old, but she was, or elderly, but she was sharp as a tack. So another neighbor on Cherry Lane was outside washing windows when he heard a gunshot and thought someone had dropped a deer. He didn't check the time, but he knew that his friend was in the shower when it happened because she was getting ready to leave at 2:30. So about the same time frame. Other locals remembered hearing a gunshot around the time of the 2-minute warning of the first half of the Green Bay Packers game. The first half ended at 2:16 p.m.
Okay.
So we're really, really narrowing that in there. Bruce Moilanen went back to Mike Nemi's house in the afternoon. Mike had been there at 2:30 to pick up deer feed, but Bruce missed him. So if Mike was there at 2:30, Bruce was there after 2:30. Gary was there and on the phone with his wife while Bruce was there. Gary's wife was about to leave their house and come meet him. It was a 45-minute drive, and she arrived at 3:30. This puts Bruce at Mike's house between 2:30 and 2:45. After leaving Mike's house, Bruce almost ran his van into Wade Johnson's vehicle. Wade's wife, Lori, had a shift starting at 3 p.m. at Elm's General Store where she sold Bruce a pop. Yes, it's pop. This is the Midwest, y'all. We're not going to call it a Coke. It's not a soda. It's a pop.
It's a pop.
At some point, Bruce went to the home of Butch, Diane, and Crystal Macy and left a 2-page note. The contents are not of much significance on the door. It was just weird. Not long after dark, Bruce stopped by the home of Irene Lamentine. Her son George was one of Bruce's only friends growing up. And George had moved to California but was back visiting. However, Bruce blew right past him, went up to Butch Macy, and asked if he had seen his note. Like, really weird. And I know I'm listing off a ton of people and a ton of times. It's all coming back to alibis and what time can be accounted for. The names aren't super important. I'll go through them again when we kind of talk about their significance, but just kind of running through what Bruce's day was, the day his wife was killed. So eventually David's wife, Yvonne, came running to the camp where Judy's father, brother, and cousin Mike were. She said something horrible had happened to Judy, but Mary was hard to understand. She wasn't sure what was going on. They needed to find Bruce, and they needed to get to the hospital. So Mike went to find Bruce while David, Yvonne, and Dale headed to the hospital. When Cousin Al asked where they had all been that day before Bruce walked in, David indicated they had all been at the camp, which is like a specific cabin they have for hunting, and then people like go into the cabin to get warm, and then they'll go sit in like a little, like the paper blind, the plastic blind thing out there. So David indicated they'd all been at the camp that day. When Bruce barged in, Dale told him that Judy had been shot. Bruce's first question was she wearing orange? Yeah.
Oh my gosh. What,
almost like
it's her own damn fault.
Yeah, she should have been wearing orange if she was out in the woods when hunting was going on. Yeah, okay. Wow. That's his first question. Not, is she okay? Because he didn't tell her she's dead. He said she's been shot. And his first question is, was she wearing orange? Bruce asked to view the body and asked David to go with him. He asked David if he could handle it, saying, it's probably going to be a little gruesome, but I'm used to it. The fuck? You are an operating room instrument technician. Yes, maybe you are used to blood, but how does that prepare you for seeing your wife's dead body? You know what no. From a violent death. You know what I mean? No. Bruce came out from viewing the body, leaned his head against the wall, and pounded his fists. And George was, remember, one of his only friends growing up, and, he just kind of blew past him when he went to his mom's house. So George Lamentine was visiting another friend when he got a phone call from his mother crying. She said Bruce had just called her. What? And said that Judy had been killed in a hunting accident. George said to his girlfriend, I hate to say it, but I think the slippery son of a bitch shot his wife. George said that right off the bat. He said Bruce had told him about a year ago about an affair that he was having with the most amazing, beautiful woman. George was skeptical about a lot of things that Bruce said. He had a way of making you believe his lies.
He sounds joyful.
Yeah. Yeah, we're not fans. He's a puny, tiny little man. Oh, the things we will get into.
Oh my gosh. Because he's going to take off with his honey bunny and...
Oh, the honey bunny doesn't want anything to do with him either, so.
Smart lady.
So, Ball and Cousin Al met with the family at the Blake house at about 10:30 p.m. that Sunday night. He talked with David, Dale, and Bruce, although Bruce sat quietly with his chin on his hands and let David and Dale speak. David explained the family had been at the camp. Bruce quietly nodded along, giving the impression that he'd been with him. Finally, David asked Bruce, where were you hunting all day? Bruce immediately rattled off an exhaustive, specific list of places he'd been that day. Cousin Al later told Ball that he thought Bruce's reaction to Judy's death was strange. He said it was like he was sobbing without tears and then quickly came out of it and answered all of Cousin Al's questions very succinctly. Ball examined the body before the medical examiner could arrive to perform the autopsy. He and the assistant medical examiner came to the conclusion that Judy had been shot in the front of the chest and the bullet exited the rear due to the irregularity of the wound below her arm. So it came out like kind of behind her armpit. And unfortunately, though, when Ball pulled Judy's shirt back from the entrance wound, the chest wound, to take pictures, a little piece of tissue was stuck to her shirt and came out of the wound. It had been pushed in by the bullet, but it came out when he did that. And it sort of made it seem like the bullet pushed it out. And so it could be, the medical examiner would later have trouble determining. He thought maybe she was shot through the back and it came out the chest because that piece of tissue was like on the outside. So that was not awesome. But anyway, on Tuesday, Ball received a call from an officer with the Marquette PD who had received a call from an anonymous source. This source claimed that Judy and Bruce had been in some marriage counseling and the marriage was on the verge of failing. The source also said that 12 to 14 months ago, there had been an accident they weren't so sure was an accident, especially now. Judy and Bruce had been working on their home. Bruce was on the roof and Judy was on the patio below when an 80 pound chimney block fell off the roof and hit Judy on the head. Luckily, it was a glancing blow because a direct hit would have surely been deadly.
Oh my God.
Yes. We will now be referring to this as the chimney block incident. When Ball returned to Ontonagon on Tuesday, Detective Sergeant Don Pupor joined him as his partner on the case. At Judy's funeral on Wednesday, Yvonne, who's David's wife, played the organ and Bruce sang and delivered a eulogy on which he spent most of the time relaying the events of the last few days in his eulogy for his wife. So everything about Bruce's behavior was confusing and out of character. He'd never really been known to like sing in public before, and it seemed like he was trying to set up his alibi in his eulogy to his wife. After the service, Bruce tried to give Judy's shotgun to her brother David. David found it a bit odd and told him he should keep it in case he needed to sell it. While the Blake family did not know too much about the Moilanen finances, mostly due to Judy trying to keep that and any marital issues off her family's radar, he knew the couple couldn't have been flush. So David asked Bruce where he stood with life insurance. Bruce said he thought it was between $40,000 and $50,000, not even enough to pay off the mortgage. The lie detector determined that was a lie. Now, I'm not going to get into it too much because this is already going to be really long, but Ball was not gunning for Bruce Moilanen. He did say the first thing we have to do is eliminate the husband. Determine if this is a crime at all, but we need to know where the husband was and at least get him eliminated before we move forward. He was investigating other leads. There were some people seen in town, but not necessarily in the area. There was a neighbor who was later arrested on meth charges. All of this stuff was investigated. All of the leads led nowhere. It's a lot of names, so I'm not gonna go into all of those. After the funeral, Ball received a call from an anonymous woman who said she was a friend of a woman who knew Bruce. She said Bruce came around this woman's workplace all the time, hounding her. She had no idea he was married, said he acted single and would send this woman flowers all the time. The woman, Gail Lampinen, was happily married and mostly annoyed by Bruce, but she was just too nice to say anything. We've got this Midwest nice thing definitely going on with this case.
So he thinks there's a chance.
I mean, if she's not that nice.
Oh, okay.
She's not nice enough to the point that he should think there's a chance. He's just that obnoxious.
Oh, God.
So the same evening in talking with David, Ball learned that Bruce had not been with Judy's family at the camp. David wasn't sure where he'd been that day. So then Ball and other investigators, they went and talked to a bunch of hospital employees. They learned that Judy was insured for $20,000 plus another $20,000 for accidental death through the hospital. So that's called double indemnification. Wow. When if you're insured for so much, but if you die accidentally, you automatically get double whatever the payout was, because that's such a shock to your family.
Wow.
That's gonna come up a lot. So they just thought, okay, this must be the 40 to 50,000 that Bruce mentioned to David. So that makes sense. After 14 years, Judy's boss had also become a friend. When he talked to Ball, he confided that he suspected the couple was having financial issues. He had suggested the employee assistance program, and he believed that Judy and Bruce were attending counseling. When Judy had mentioned bankruptcy, this man had talked to some of his friends at the bank about cutting the Moilanens a break, and Judy had thanked him for his help. Ball asked about the chimney block incident, and Judy's boss said he wasn't sure of the specifics, but that Judy was lucky to have survived. Ball and Popor talked with other hospital employees. All of them had loved Judy. Every single person they had talked to loved Judy. Many of them had problems with Bruce.
Oh.
One employee said he'd taken his dog to Bruce for training and saw Bruce kick another dog hard. He said he wouldn't take his dog back after that.
Oh.
Another said Judy had come to her very upset in October or November, saying they were facing a bankruptcy because of Bruce's financial decisions and that he may even be involved in fraud and she might be implicated as well. She had thoughts of leaving him but didn't want to take his daughter away. She was adamant that her parents never find out about the problems. While most of the family had warmed to Bruce, she knew her mother had never truly approved. Many had noticed that Judy had been upset and emotional in October and November, which was very unusual for her, especially at work. They empathized and worried for her. After leaving Judy crying in an office one day, Bruce walked out and said to another woman, "Don't worry, I'll make you cry someday soon." Yeah.
What a pig.
Yes. In talking with hospital employees in Bruce's area, the conversations were not nearly so warm and fuzzy. Bruce was either late for work or missing scheduled shifts, irritating the rest of the team. He fought over minutia in his job description, and people saw him wandering all over the hospital all the time. His supervisor tried to find a different position for him, but no one would touch the guy. She said he was the worst employee she'd ever had. A maintenance worker was reportedly overheard in the cafeteria saying he didn't get her with the brick, but he got her this time.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, people did not like this guy. Like, months this goes on and they can't find a single person who's like, yeah, I really thought he was a good dude. The more detectives talked to people close to the Moilanens, the more of the same they heard. People loved Judy, but Bruce was off. When they went to talk to Irene and John Janofsky, who provided daycare for the Moilanens' daughter, they said that Judy had become a very close friend, but they weren't close with Bruce. At one point, he had called them, quote, stupid people. They had also sensed a change in Judy about 6 weeks prior. She was emotional, upset. They noticed a change in the account they were paid from. It started coming from an account with only Judy's name on the checks instead of the joint account she said the couple had been paying them from. She'd also noticed they'd been selling things like a camper and an ATV. The chimney block incident bothered them. They believed that the Moilanen's daughter, whose name you can find but I'm not using, who had been 2 at the time, had seen and knew what happened. And they said that wasn't the only incidents that made them suspicious. A couple months after the chimney block incident, Judy had told them that she'd woken up to a house filled with smoke. Bruce had dumped the ashes from the wood stove and had clumsily dropped hot ashes on the wood pile, starting it on fire. Then he left his sleeping wife and daughter in the house to go hunting.
What?
Yep.
Okay.
When they talked to Irene and John's 21-year-old daughter, so Irene and John are the daycare providers, this is their 21-year-old daughter, she said she never liked Bruce, but she'd run into him since Judy's death, and he spoke of his loneliness, how big the house seemed, how he longed for adult companionship, and how much his daughter would love to see her. She got the impression Bruce wanted her to come stay for a night. She said she might stop over for a few hours to see Elise sometime, but she never went.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Detectives went to interview Bruce on Thursday. They didn't reveal much of their investigation to him, and they told him they needed to eliminate him and his guns, so Bruce signed a consent to search and handed over his weapons and ammunition for testing. Bruce talked of his wife being in a car accident, an ATV accident, how she'd been packing up some of her clothes before Thanksgiving for St. Vincent de Paul, like she'd somehow had a subconscious premonition. But of all the accidents that he mentioned his wife having, trying to make her seem like she's accident prone, neither the chimney block accident nor the fire was mentioned. A more formal interview was scheduled for Friday. Bruce showed up an hour late. He explained his whereabouts on Sunday, including that he almost backed into Wade Johnson around 2:15 p.m. That is a different time than was previously discussed. Then going to Mike Neamy's house to pick up feed, and then going back out hunting. He claimed they had no major marital problems, no major financial issues. Then they asked about life insurance. Bruce claimed he had $60K with Lutheran Brotherhood, but $5K was taken against that for work on the house. This had double indemnity for accidental death. There was also a policy through Northwestern Mutual for $75,000 that was set in a trust for their daughter should something happen to one of them. He said he thought she was covered for about $5K at the hospital and $1K for credit union. They had previously heard from David that Bruce thought Judy was covered for about $45,000. Now they were looking at over $200,000. Bruce claimed there were no other women in his life and looked almost offended by the question. When asked if there were any traumatic events, Bruce began to answer none, but then stated that a year ago in September they were doing work on the house and Judy had fallen off the roof and spent 4 days in the hospital.
Damn that accident prone of her.
This is the chimney block incident.
Oh.
He's changed the story. Now Judy has fallen off the roof instead of a chimney block falling off the roof and hitting her. This is the second of 3 such stories we will hear about this incident. Okay, so when questioned about this, because they were like, wait a second, Bruce reiterated that she had fallen off the roof, landed on the patio, and had a concussion. This was a completely different story than they'd heard previously. Bruce signed consent forms for the detectives to search his house and financial records. They asked him to take a polygraph that afternoon. He said that was fine with him, but he'd have to check with the babysitter. He called Irene.
That's good, but I'm going to check with the babysitter.
Yeah. So he called Irene and reported that she was not available and he needed to go get his daughter. The detectives then called Irene, who told them she told Bruce she was available all afternoon. Bruce had been
special.
Yeah, he thinks he's very special. Bruce had been pestering Gail and Paul Lampinen for nearly 2 years by the time Gail read about Judy's death in the newspaper. In all that time, she'd never initiated contact or called him. She couldn't exactly recall Bruce's wife's name and wasn't sure it was her until Bruce was mentioned at the end of the article. Bruce had begun showing up unannounced at Gail's office and even her home and calling both frequently. In the summer of 1991, he had stated that he and Judy were getting divorced. He kept hinting that the divorce was imminent, but it never seemed to come. Gail was too nice to shoo Bruce away like the insect he was, and Paul was too unthreatened to be bothered. He was like, if she can put up with it, I'll put up with it. Like, he's not taking my wife.
Yeah.
Okay, let me tell you. That dude, no. She decided to call Bruce and offer their condolences because, technically she's like, I know Bruce thinks we're friends, even though we don't really care for him. It's the right thing to do is offer our condolences.
It is, yeah.
So she left a message, and then on December 11th, Bruce called the Lampinens and asked them to come meet him for lunch. He was very upbeat. he had brought them Christmas presents. He announced he was selling all of his businesses and retiring from the hospital. He was 37 years old. He followed the Lampanins home, saying that he had things in the van for them. The 5 boxes Bruce left sat until Saturday morning when Gail decided to just get it over with. Like, she did not want this stuff.
I don't blame her.
No. But she's like, okay, I better just see what is in here. The first box was filled with many nice sweaters and a letter. It's the sweater letter. It was dated June 6th of 1992. So, over 5 months before
the incident.
5 months before Judy was killed. So it says Gail and then colon. That becomes important later. It's not a comma, it's a colon.
It's a colon.
These are for you. Bruce wouldn't let me send them to St. Vinny's. He thought you or your girls could wear them. Enjoy them if you can use them. He thinks a lot of you. I guess it's the animals you have in common. Sometimes it makes me jealous, but at this point it shouldn't matter, I guess. He really is a great guy. Actually, none better. After 14 years, we just don't see things the same anymore. He loves those dogs. I love my work and freedom. However, I do need a favor from you. At this point, you are the only woman he trusts, and I'm sure of that. Help him find a woman to take care of him. One that loves animals as much as he does. I'm sorry we never got to know each other better. You sound like a great lady. Love, S. Judes. P.S. Don't tell the prospects, but believe it or not, he's incredible in the sack.
Okay.
I'll give everyone a moment to go ahead and throw up in their mouths a little bit.
No woman would ever tell someone, and especially someone that they're not, quote, quote, that good of friends with.
Right.
Help find someone for my husband, and, quote, quote, he's good in this sack.
Yeah.
Like.
And especially, like, Judy was a very quiet, conservative,
Yes. She
professional person. Yes.
I mean.
So, all right.
Ugh.
Gail was shocked, as was Paul when he read it. The boxes contained what seemed like the entire contents of Judy's wardrobe. The letter was written 6 months ago, and that P.S. What in the actual fuck? Gail wouldn't say that. I did. And another anomaly. Gail spells her name Gayle. She found it surprising that someone she'd met only once for a couple of minutes would spell her name correctly instead of assuming the much more common Gail. Gail contacted Detective Ball. It was time to look into the chimney block incident, more thoroughly. In the fall of 1991, Judy was walking around with stitches and a large neck brace, telling people she'd had an accident. Detectives had heard 3 versions of the story, all somehow originating from Bruce. First, that the chimney block had slipped off the roof and hit Judy on the head below. Second, that a scaffolding on the roof had collapsed, causing the block to fall and hit Judy on the head below. And third, that Judy had fallen off the roof and hit her head on the patio. The trooper who arrived at scene that day reported that Bruce said he'd been working on the roof and heard his wife moan below. He realized a chimney block had fallen off the roof and hit her. The trooper didn't notice any scaffolding and didn't pay attention because it hadn't been mentioned at that time. Judy, who was amazingly conscious, had stated that the brick fell on her. The attending physician at the hospital said his report stated that a brick had fallen on Judy when scaffolding collapsed. While the source was not stated in his report, it had to have come from Judy or Bruce. Bruce filed an insurance claim for the gouge the block had made in the patio. Yeah.
Okay, question. Was Judy out there, and I'm sorry if I missed it, was Judy out there by herself on the scaffolding?
No.
Okay.
Bruce was on the roof doing work on the chimney, and she was on the patio, like, cutting strips of, like, weather stripping for him to put, like, to, like, reseal the chimney.
That's right. Oh my gosh, I just got so, like, distracted by attempted murders.
Yes. Yeah, there's a lot of them.
There's a lot of them.
Okay, so Bruce filed an insurance claim for the gouge the clock had made in the patio. Bruce filed a lot of insurance claims, despite having trouble with coverage due to lapsed payments. Funnily enough, he did not file one for the fire in the basement in the fall of 1991.
How has his insurance company not cut him?
I think he switched around a lot. I think I think he shopped around at a lot of different because it keeps coming up. Like, well, he let this lapse. Or he got kicked off and he went to a new company. You know, there was a lot of that.
He is a
pig.
Okay, sorry.
No, you're fine.
Oh.
So while fragments of now we're back to the investigation of Judy's death now. While fragments were recovered from Judy's body, Ball really wanted the full bullet. He enlisted the help of Dan Castle, who was handy with a metal detector. Shortly after Judy's death, investigators had discovered a fresh notch in a tree and believed that the bullet had hit the tree after going through Judy. If it had hit the tree before, the bullet would have been damaged and would have caused more irregular wounds on Judy's body. So that's why they thought it happened afterwards. And this really helped them to determine trajectory. So Castle searched for the bullet for days, and he just would not give up. And finally, he brought out a slingshot and marbles.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Yeah. And wouldn't you know, a couple of the marbles landed right next to a bullet on December 13th. The state forensics lab was able to find fibers consistent with Judy's clothing and determine a list of possible weapons that could have fired this bullet. On Monday, December 14th, Ball was starting to get calls from Montonagan. Bruce had been telling everyone the cops were hounding him, gunning for him, harassing him, and he had an alibi for 3 p.m. the day of Judy's death. How could anyone possibly think it was him? Poor Brucey. When asked why the caller were so convinced the time of death was 3 p.m., the caller stated that Bruce said that was what was on the death certificate. Time of death was estimated, and Ball was fairly certain it was off. Of all the calls coming in, none were accounting for the time the gunshot was heard by 2 people on Cherry Lane between 2:10 and 2:15. So Bruce called the medical exam and said, when was the time of death? And that's what he's trying to make sure he has an alibi for 3 p.m.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Moilanen was still evading a polygraph test, saying he was too stressed over the death of his wife. In the days after Judy's death, Bruce tried to collect certain insurance claims and move money from his wife's accounts into his own. He was also taking out ads in newspapers asking for anyone who had seen his van in the area between 3 and 5 p.m. on the day of Judy's death. He was really leaning on the 3 p.m. time of death.
I was just going to say.
Yeah. And, like, anytime they do that, it's always estimated anyway. It's always, like, yes, we put 3 p.m. on there with the knowledge that it can go 2 hours either way. You know, and that's when they're, like, really sure. So as detectives continued to look into Bruce's finances, and there was a lot to look into, they found something interesting. While attempting to refinance and pay off debt, Bruce provided a list of assets. On the list was something Bruce had not disclosed to detectives, a Savage Model 110 30-06 rifle. They'd seen this gun on a list before. The list of possible weapons that could have fired the bullet that killed Judy. So when he wanted to get it insured for money, he put it on the list. But then when detectives asked, what weapons do you or have you had? He did not put it on the list.
A pig!
Yeah. While going through papers found in Bruce's basement, Ball discovered life insurance policies. A lot of them. Lutheran Brotherhood for $60,000, Northwestern Mutual $150,000 double indemnity, Northwestern Mutual $70,000, Safeco $40,000 double indemnity, First Bank of America $10,000, for a total of $330,000 in insurance on Judy.
Wow.
Yeah, he told the family 40.
He's going places.
Yeah. All right. On December 17th, Ball and Papour went to speak with the Blakes. Bruce had been spinning his tale of woe, and Marianne spoke her mind about how she thought Bruce was being harassed. Detectives decided it was time to bring the family into the investigation. They explained to Marianne, Dale, and David about the marital and financial issues they had uncovered and the excessive amount of life insurance Bruce had taken out on Judy. The family agreed to keep the information to themselves and to keep Bruce close. To help with the investigation, but mostly to keep their granddaughter as close as possible.
I was going to say, where is the little girl during all of this?
She's with Bruce in Marquette, but he is coming to the Blake house in Ontonagon like every weekend. And what he does is he drops his daughter off with them and goes to the ski slopes all weekend long. Nobody really knows what he's doing.
Okay.
Which was fine with them because like after they found this out, they're like, we want our granddaughter as close to us as possible.
Just gonna say
we will report to you like anything he says, but
this way they
like this is tough. They were so tough though, so tough. On December 18th, Ball finally got back in touch with Gail. She relayed the bizarre visit, the boxes, and the letter. The letter in the boxes was dated June, but Bruce had told him that Judy had just been packing up some clothes the week before Thanksgiving. Remember when he said it was almost like she had a subconscious premonition she was packing up her clothes for St. Vincent de Paul.
Yeah.
But this letter was dated in June that was in those boxes he said she was packing up. So Ball picked up the clothes and asked the Lampinens if they would mind passing on any information that Bruce provided. They agreed. The sweater letter was sent for handwriting analysis. Bruce continued to work on his alibi. He called Wade Johnson and told him it was about 2:15 that they had their run-in. Wade wasn't sure, but he said, sure, I don't know, that could be right. Wade's wife disagreed. Her shift started at 3, and she had stopped home beforehand. Wade had been getting out of the shower at 2:30 and left the house at almost the same time as her, meaning he couldn't have had his run-in with Bruce until almost 3 p.m. Yeah.
Oh.
He pushed Marianne, Bruce also pushed Marianne that Judy must have left the house at like 2 p.m. when we know her brother said it had to be between 1:15 and 1:30. In January, Ball began talking with Leanne, Judy's lifelong friend. She did not like Bruce. We keep hearing this. And said he was always insulting her, and she tried to see Judy just when Bruce wasn't around, whenever possible. But after Judy died, Bruce started calling and showing up unannounced. He talked of his loneliness, about becoming more than friends. He talked about Judy's death in detail, explaining how he thought it happened. Leanne was uncomfortable and agreed to report on Bruce to the detective. The handwriting expert came back and said he was sure that Judy had not written the sweater letter, but he wasn't sure yet that it was Bruce, so he requested more samples. Bruce was spending every weekend in Ontonagon, dropping his daughter off with the Blakes, which was more than fine with them, and heading to the slopes. He did meet with the detectives again, but continued to avoid a polygraph with excuses and lies confirmed by the hospital or his daycare provider. He gave Gail a card stating, if you need someone to listen, I'm here. If you need a little support, I'm here. If you need a pat on the back, I'm here. And then signed, naked mud wrestling also available upon request. Sincerely,
What?
Bruce. Yup. Inside was a 2-page letter detailing how much he loved and valued their friendship, then saying in part, I guess what I want to say is I truly love you, not in the sense of throwing you in the sack and thrashing your bones, although any man who hasn't had that thought cross his mind is even crazier than I am. I love you dearly and I'll be your friend and immoral supporter forever. This is considered the I love you letter. And notice he said immoral supporter, not immortal supporter. Bruce went back to work on January 25th briefly. He disappeared a few hours into his shift and was given a written warning that another offense would result in his firing. Gail continued to get calls and flowers and unexpected visits from Bruce. She and Paul were beginning to get nervous. So was Leanne, who was beginning to come home and find Bruce in her home, saying he needed to use her phone, or he wanted to see her, or he was hoping they could be more than friends. He even suggested that she and her daughter move in with him. Another hospital worker reported Bruce showing up and calling her, claiming professional talks, but all was turning to personal conversations. He got close to her in the hallway and dropped 3 chocolate hearts into her pocket with lovey sayings on them. She said she could provide the names of many other women who were uncomfortable working around Bruce. Bruce, yeah. Bruce was now telling the police he couldn't take a polygraph because he was on medication for depression and anxiety for a few weeks because he couldn't sleep. He was also telling the hospital staff that he couldn't work because he had to take a polygraph test.
That's not.
I mean, he's either stupid or he just does not care because these lies are so easy to catch him in. And that's why this case is so long, because, like, he's so stupid, but it's so crazy. I gotta include it all.
But also, I mean, he's so stupid about it, but it's almost like, is it true?
Yeah.
Or is it not? Because it's too dumb to believe, but it's actually...
Yes.
Oh.
So he was suspended in early March for skipping out on shifts. During this time off, as he called it, he pushed Gail to have lunch and delivered what would become known as the asset letter, in which he rambled for 9 pages inappropriately and estimated his net worth to be a cool $500,000, with his $387,000 in cash, an $82,000 house, and a 324-acre farm. The handwriting expert had by now determined that the sweater letter and the I love you letter were both written by Bruce. Remember, the sweater letter was supposedly written by Judy. And now the handwriting expert is saying no way. And he spelled Gail the same way. He used a colon instead of a comma.
How do you not know how to spell your wife's name?
No. He, Gail. Remember, this Gail.
Okay.
She spells it Gayle.
And the other one was Gail.
That's the more common spelling. And she just didn't know. She's like, Bruce knows how to spell my name because he sent me flowers and he's seen my office door and that kind of thing. But how did she know? Why would Judy assume that I spell my name like this when the much more common spelling is Gail? So there was that, there was the colon and the way he signed off with his sincerely, like there were very, she's like, he tried to hide it, but no, it was him. When Bruce returned to work, he handed in his resignation effective June 1st. The hospital said they'd accept his resignation, but it would take effect immediately. The supervisor was finally rid of Bruce Moilanen. Mike Nemi, who remembers Judy's cousin, he knew nothing of the police and family's evidence and suspicions of Bruce. So remember, the police brought the family in and they brought some of these women in, but they want to keep it sort of hush-hush on the down low. They don't want Bruce to know everything they've uncovered. So Mike was not brought into the fold because he's like a cousin. He's not around all the time. He's not going to be around Bruce all the time. So he didn't know anything about this. And he is like Bruce's only friend. So he drove Bruce to Traverse City to take a private polygraph test, not with the police.
Smart.
And then he told everyone how well he did. How this was the second one he'd taken, that they asked him 8,000 questions over hours and hours and hours, and he passed it 3 times. Yep.
Okay.
After finding 2 teddy bears in her car and yet another letter from Bruce, Gail had finally had enough. She wrote back to Bruce, returning...
Did she not lock her doors?
I don't know.
Because he might be laying in the back seat one
I
day.
know. I thought that was really weird, too. It was, like, on the front seat of her car, I think. I mean, maybe it was on the car. I don't know. It said in her car, so... Anyway, she finally wrote back to Bruce, returning the teddy bears, like basically saying maybe your daughter could use a teddy bear because her mother is dead, you know, and telling him she could no longer accept anything from him and asking him not to contact her or Paul in any way. Bruce was not deterred. He sent Gail another letter and called Paul to ask him to lunch.
It was another challenge.
Yeah, he
does not take no.
No. Detectives were waiting for Bruce on April 1st. Because he's still pushing them off on, they want to do another interview. They want to do their own polygraph test, and he keeps pushing him off. So they just decided to wait for him around his house on April 1st. And they finally got him to agree to go sit at the Big Boy restaurant and just have a talk. They still wanted him to do their polygraph test. They asked about the results of his private test. He told them he had passed, and they asked him to sign a consent form so that they could view the results. And then it took detectives another week, to get in touch with him again. He wasn't so keen to sign the form, but he did finally relent. And he also agreed to take a police polygraph on April 23rd. That was like the 5th date they gave him, because this is like the beginning of April. And they're like, how about this date? How about this date? How about this date? Finally, he agreed to one.
He's busy putting teddy bears on cars.
Right. The administrator said Bruce was... Ball and Popor were very skeptical that he would show up. They called the administrator of the polygraph in Traverse City. The administrator said Bruce was out cold in the library when he came to get him. He even kicked him hard in the foot, but could not wake him. He left him there asleep for an hour. Bruce eventually woke and they started the test. He told the administrator he'd been on antidepressants but had been off them for a week. Bruce only wanted questions about where they'd been that day, but the administrator got some questions about Judy's death in. Ball thought all these questions were similar to what he would ask in a polygraph. So he passed? The administrator said, I did not tell Bruce that he passed. He was shocked to hear that Bruce had said that he had. The test was inconclusive. Dude could not be woken up in a public library. He drugged himself in an attempt to slow his vitals and pass the test.
I was just going to say.
There is no way. I mean, I don't think without performing a drug test, the administrator can say that, but that's what happened, On April 23rd, Ball and Popor were anxious, but not terribly surprised when Bruce didn't walk in at 11 a.m. But he did walk in at 11:30 and agreed to the polygraph. Chuck Allen, a specialist brought in for this occasion, would be administering the test. Allen walked through the questions and studied the results and the subject. He presented the sweater letter to Bruce and told him he wasn't passing the test, and he thought Bruce had killed his wife. He asked Bruce if he knew that they'd found the bullet. Bruce chuckled and stated they'd only found fragments. Allen corrected him. Bruce stopped chuckling. Allen asked if this was deliberate or an accident. Bruce said he probably shouldn't answer that without an attorney, and Allen told him that was fine. Get an attorney if he wanted one. Bruce said, I'll just go on ahead. It wasn't deliberate. They've got him. So Ball came back into the room and recording began because you can't record a polygraph test.
Yeah.
But Allen was like, okay, I need to get Detective Ball in here. He's the one who needs to hear this. He's the one who needs to talk to you if you want to keep talking. Ball laid out the evidence, the chimney block incident, the financial and marital troubles, the lies, and the letters. Bruce eventually stated that he did it, but not for Gail. He said Judy had been threatening to leave for 2.5 years, that she would have taken half of everything he had. By the way, Judy made significantly more than Bruce because she went to work and stuff.
She went, yeah.
Yeah.
But here's my thing. He's worried about her leaving and taking half. He just lost everything.
Yep.
Oh.
He thought he was smarter than everybody. And okay, the rest of this, get ready for your blood pressure to go up because we're both going to be pissed. So let's just deal with it. He said that she was a tyrant, both at work and at home, that she was so involved with work, he'd have to take care of their daughter and do most of the cooking. But she wasn't even a good cook anyway. When asked if he felt remorse, he said he guessed guilt and remorse were the same thing. When asked why he didn't get a divorce, he reiterated that he'd lose what little he had. When asked if he'd do it over, he said, not after all the misery it's brought on. Oh, now that you've been caught, we've got regrets? You little, tiny, bloody coward. Gets worse. I know.
Maybe because he's so good in bed, he'll find someone in prison.
Bruce asked how long it would be before the shit would hit the proverbial fan. He asked if he could spend Saturday and Sunday with his daughter.
Yes.
You just confessed to murder.
But we're going to make sure you get some quality family time in.
The absolute audacity of this puny man. Bruce said,
he didn't hurt his daughter.
Oh, like, I know. Because it seemed like she could have been collateral damage. I mean, he set that fire. If you believe... the fire could possibly be an accident. There's not nearly as much evidence with that as there is with the chimney block incident. But I don't think anything is an accident with this guy.
Oh.
So Bruce said he destroyed the gun with a torch and threw the pieces in the river the week before Christmas. Ball was skeptical. 1, this was after the police had searched his house. 2, that he would be able to destroy the gun in the manner described. And 3, he would have kept it to throw it in a river when there were so many places in the woods to hide it. But he had to try and find it. Bruce did confirm it was the Savage 30-06 and that he fired it around 2:15. He hadn't known Judy would be there, but figured she'd walk the dogs at some point, so he sat there and waited. Judy walked by once and he couldn't do it. She walked by again, he closed his eyes and pulled the trigger. But funnily enough, he corrected the medical examiner's official assertion that she was shot in the back and said she was shot in the front. Ball had known that, but it was awfully nice of Bruce to tidy it up. He said he'd bought the gun from an ad in a magazine. Bruce again said he wanted to go home and invited Ball to stay in the house with him. Like, just let me go home. Like, you can stay with me. Like, I'm not going to run away. You can stay with me. Just let me go home.
Yes, because I want to stay in the house with a killer.
Ball stated the prosecutor would need to make those decisions, and he placed Bruce in custody. Ball did very kindly allow a stop on the way to the jail. Bruce took care of his dogs, then spent a few minutes alone with his daughter before leaving. His daughter would go stay with the Janovskis until David and Yvonne could pick her up the next day. 2 days after he was booked into jail, the deputy noticed on the TV screen that Bruce was under all his blankets in his bunk. Deputy Kintzman rushed into the cell and tore the blankets away to find Bruce attempting to strangle himself with a sheet. He removed such items from the cell. Then Bruce called David Blake, crying and complaining about how the guard had stopped his attempt. He's such a tiny, worthless little shit. He was trying to garner sympathy, and then he went off to Judy's brother about how awful Judy had been to him. David Blake had to be the most patient person on the planet. Like, he just took it. He did finally tell Bruce he couldn't call every night to talk to his daughter. It was confusing and upsetting her.
Well, gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
She lost her mom. Her dad's away. I mean...
Yeah, and at one point, Bruce said to him, "Does she miss her dad?" And David says, "Yes, and her mom." Yeah. If he had a soul, that would have, like, burned right through it. But Bruce doesn't have a soul, I don't think so.
No.
So Bruce continued to call everyone, trying to garner sympathy, trying to build a case for an insanity defense, saying he must have snapped. He must have been insane. Only an insane person does this. Leanne got a call where Bruce said he wanted her to move into his house and share it with his sister. Irene got a call that Bruce was angry that David wouldn't let him speak to his daughter whenever he wanted, so he was going to have her moved back to Marquette and placed with his family. So would she babysit? This man was not insane, but he definitely lived in his own little world. Bruce wanted a visitor. Actually, he wanted things, and he needed someone to bring them to him. So he asked Mike Nemi to bring him a suit and a briefcase and a bunch of office supplies. Mike did this for a man he once considered a close friend. He may have been the only one. Mike asked what had happened and why. Bruce went through his crazy spiel, claimed Gail had talked him out of a divorce. Mike had no idea who Gail was. Claimed Judy had been threatening to leave and there were more money problems. Asked Mike if he knew about his suicide attempt. Mike realized what Bruce was up to and stood up to leave. Bruce asked him to bring a TV for his cell next visit. Like, oh my God. Oh my God.
Wow.
Yeah. So being in jail did not stop Bruce from creating chaos. Irene noticed an ad in the paper for an auction at the Moilanen house. Apparently, Bruce had arranged to sell off possessions to pay for his legal defense. Irene found Marianne, who was camping in the area, and they rushed to the house. Not only were Bruce's possessions set for auction, but all of Judy and his daughter's possessions as well. Everything. Irene and Mary Ann announced to everyone who was there what this auction was all about. A man selling his wife and daughter's possessions to pay for the defense of the crime of killing that wife, that child's mother. Anyone previously interested in the auction took off, and Mary Ann and Irene packed up everything of Judy and the daughters to take with them.
I was going to say.
Yep. Additionally, Judy's family had already ordered her a headstone. But when they went to visit her grave one day, they noticed a marker there. One side had Judy's name and dates with, in quotes, loving wife of Bruce. And on the other side had Bruce's name and dates. The family ensured the marker didn't last a day. The audacity. It's crazy.
He is a special, breed of arrogance.
Yeah. Really. It's out there. All right. On a hot Saturday in Ontonagon, July 31st, the Ontonagon County Fair was in full swing in Greenland, about 12 miles from Ontonagon Village. Many of the deputies were busy with the fair, and Deputy Kintzman was just talking to Deputy Rentala at the station before heading there himself. Rentala would be the only deputy in Ontonagon for the day. Bruce waited 20 minutes after Kintzman had left and knocked on the window to let Rentala know that his trash needed to be empty. When Rentala opened the door, Bruce flung a bowl out from under a bag into the deputy's eyes. It was full of salt, pepper, and soap shavings, and it temporarily blinded Rentala. Bruce bolted. He had on 2 pairs of shorts and 2 shirts, so he shed the top clothes as he ran, so that his description would be wrong. Rentala blindly found the radio and reported what had happened and a description of Bruce, including the wrong clothes. Burgess, remember the jack of all trades guy? Yes. He heard, so he was the guy who had been the EMT and medical examiner in the investigation for Judy, one of the first ones there. Heard the radio at 1:40 p.m. and called the station. Rentala explained that Bruce had escaped and he couldn't see and he needed help. He asked Burgess to head to Greenland to alert the sheriff. On his way, Burgess noticed Kintzman's cruiser in the courthouse parking lot, and so he just screeched in there. The sheriff happened to be there too. Bruce thought he was so smart. Neither Kintzman or the sheriff were in Greenland yet. So Burgess relayed the situation. Ontonagon Village Police Chief Tim Guzek and Deputy Terry Dove were also only minutes away. David heard the alert come over the radio. Actually, I think he didn't have a radio, but somebody called him and told him they had heard it over the radio. He was panicked because Judy's daughter was home alone with a babysitter because Yvonne was working somewhere else. He was working. So he rushed home, terrified. He was actually driving an oil truck because he didn't even want to take the time to switch to his car. He just drove the oil truck to his house. But neighbors who had also heard the alert had already surrounded his home in a wall of protection. They weren't going to let anybody come for that little girl. Officers knew Bruce's options were limited in a town like Ontonagon, and he'd most likely head to the shore of Lake Superior. They fanned out but converged when Burgess radioed that he'd spotted Bruce running for the lake. Bruce knew he was caught. He begged the officers to shoot him rather than take him back. They didn't. The door to Bruce's cell would no longer be open unless there was one deputy to open it and an armed one standing by. Bruce's trial began December 2nd, 1993, so just a year and a few days after Judy's death. His lawyer, Tom Castleman, and his wife, Rhonda, who served as his private investigator, made a formidable team and had decades of experience. It was slightly intimidating for the young prosecutor, Beth Paxeni, but she was up to the challenge. I'm not going to go into a lot about the trial here because they really reiterate most of the things that were covered in the investigation. So I'm going to give kind of a summary of the highlights. I will say the book really goes in depth about Tom Castleman. He's a very interesting character. So if you want more on that and more on the trial, I do definitely recommend reading that book. It's a good one. But so here's a few things to note about the trial. Though several searches were conducted, the gun was never found. What was found was the man who sold it to Bruce in the first place. They found the man who'd placed the ad. Unfortunately, when they asked him to identify the buyer, they didn't give him a photo lineup. They presented only a photo of Bruce. He said he thought so, but he would really need to see the guy in person. So they brought the man into the courtroom during a preliminary hearing. The guy was positive Bruce was the buyer, but because the identity was confirmed on one photograph and then seeing Bruce like in a courtroom in handcuffs, like it was a subject under arrest. It was giving the impression of guilt, so it would not be allowed in the trial. The issue of Ball moving that piece of tissue from the entrance wound and the medical examiner then thinking is the exit wound was a problem. Actually, the medical examiner himself was kind of a big problem. He was older. He didn't remember a lot of things. A lot of things he said weren't necessarily agreed with by like any other forensic pathologist that took a look at what was going on. But other experts in forensics were able to compensate for some of the damage that he kind of caused on the stand for the prosecution. Jeez. There were rumors that Bruce's mother was going to provide an alibi for him, you know, since all of his other alibis were not for the actual time of the murder because he was doing the murder.
Because mommy will.
Yeah.
Because mommy said, so it's okay.
They went in depth with the financial issues, particularly the life insurance and the fact that Bruce let his own policies lapse at times, but he always made sure that Judy's were paid up. Ball and others conducted experiments related to the chimney block incident. Actually, they did this twice because the first time they forgot to get a signature on the warrant, so they needed to redo it for it all to be allowed in trial. The scaffolding Bruce had mentioned was at the house, but the legs had never been connected in a way that told them the scaffolding had never been used. They tried various ways to get the block to fall off the roof. Remember, this thing weighs 80 pounds.
So is it like an egg drop like you used to do in school?
Yeah, kind of. They set it like close to the edge of the roof. They set it up a little bit higher. They jumped on the roof. They nudged it. They left it hanging halfway off the side. They pushed it just gently, like unless it would fall, because they had the exact measurements of where the chimney block hit too. Because remember, Bruce filed that claim on insurance. And he had to take pictures and point out exactly where the patio was damaged. So even when they pushed the chimney block off the, if they pushed it just gently, just to make it fall, it fell straight down. The only way they could get it to fall where he said it fell, where the insurance showed that it fell, was if they shoved it forcefully, almost threw it off the side of the roof. So, yeah. The letters were a very big part of the trial, as was everyone who'd had such odd contact with over the past year. When Gail took the stand, Bruce started sobbing uncontrollably at the defense table, to the point that, like, the judge eventually had to call a recess. Castleman was furious. He's like, if you're crying about your wife, don't, because you killed her and she's dead. Or he's like, you know, she's gone. You can't do anything about that. He's like, if you're crying about this other woman, that is making you look terrible in the murder trial for your wife. Like, what are you doing? Judy and Bruce's daughter had told family members that she had seen her daddy throw a brick on mommy in relation to the chimney block incident. However, since she was 4 and had been 2 when it happened, they didn't want to traumatize the child any further. They did not put her on the stand.
Thank you. I mean,
yes, I agree. Mike Nemi, who testified about his visit with Bruce at jail and his assumption that Bruce was trying to build an insanity offense, and David Blake were the last witnesses for the prosecution, and they are who Castleman felt were the most damning. David said he had offered Bruce his forgiveness, but he still had to be held accountable. That man is just... And he took the daughter and raised her the rest of her life.
Oh.
Him and his wife. So Mike, you know, who had really been the only one to stand by him until he went and visited him, and it just clicked for him, like, how bad Bruce was. And so he ended up testifying for the prosecution and being one of the most damning witnesses.
Wow.
The defense rested without calling a single witness. Now, this is a tactic the defense will take sometimes. If they feel their defense witnesses are not strong, may do damage to the case, or may not hold up under cross-examination, they'll just rest, and they can say the burden is with the state to prove their case. They're the one who have a burden. They have to prove that he did it beyond a reasonable doubt. And so if I don't have to defend myself, you know, my client doesn't have to defend themselves. So you didn't prove your case beyond a reasonable doubt. I don't need to say anything in my own defense, which is what they basically did here. He painted Leanne and Gail as traitors to a man who considered them a friend. And he said the prosecutor says Bruce never tells the truth unless he's giving a blithering idiot confession. Best words to the jury were Bruce Moilanen was hunting that day, but he was hunting his wife. Yeah. After 6 hours, 39 minutes of deliberation, when he was lying in wait. He was lying in wait for her to walk by, like a deer.
Like a pig.
Yeah, he's awful. After 6 hours and 39 minutes of deliberation, the jury reached a verdict. Guilty of first-degree premeditated murder. Bruce was later sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He has exhausted all of his appeals and his parental rights. Castleman no longer represents him and said, I felt we'd earned a moral victory when the jury didn't come back in 10 minutes. I knew we'd done a good job, but I didn't have any doubt that they would convict. David and Yvonne raised Judy's daughter. And Judy Blake Moilanen was the last murder victim in Ontonagon County on November 29th, 1992. That was the last murder there.
Wow.
Still, to this day. That was the most recent one.
Wow.
Yeah.
He's evil.
He is evil.
He's a stupid kind of evil. You know what I mean?
Like, he thinks he's an evil genius, but he's just evil. He's an evil
cocky.
Stupid. Yes, he's very cocky, very...
And that's dangerous. Because they mentally think everybody wants them, everybody wants to be with them, like, everybody wants to be around him.
Yeah, I would be...
Here's my dead wife's clothes. Like...
Yeah, I just awful in the way he harassed women and just assumed that they all loved him. But then he'd be so self-deprecating with them, like, "Oh, shucks, I'm sure glad a chum like me has got a friend like you." You know, like, I don't. He was just really, truly awful. He was doing all of that, you know, while he was still married to Judy, and then to paint her in such a horrible light and blame her. She was going to take my child away. She was going to take everything I had. You didn't have anything. Everything that was had was hers.
I was going to say she was the breadwinner. She had the, yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So it was, yeah. It's a tough one. But a very interesting case. You know, he tried to kill himself. I don't think he really would have hurt himself. But he, the escape too.
Yeah.
That was, where were you gonna go, bro? Like, everybody knows who you are.
But everybody loves him. His mom will take of it. I mean,
yeah.
like,
yeah. I don't know. But, yeah, so that was a long one. Thanks for tuning in. We appreciate you guys listening.
Oh my god, yeah, that one was definitely...
Yeah.
It was interesting. All right, so don't forget, click, like, share, follow the Cornfield Coven.
Things.
Or as our other Jen says, the Corn-Fed Coven.
Yeah.
And don't forget to check out our website at cornfieldcoven.podbean.com and check out our merch. Stay tuned for the next one.
All right. Bye, witches.